And I'm back. Another day in Bagan. Another overcast day, very windy with lots of clouds up there. But it was like this yesterday as well, threatening rain all day. It never did rain, a little bit of a sprinkle, but nothing beyond that I noticed. So I think today will be roughly the same. I've got 2 or 3 things I want to do today. Number 1, of course, is to get my e-bike. That's the most exciting part of the day. After that, I'm heading to the Bagan Archaeological Museum. I've heard mixed reviews of this museum, but I always love a good museum, and what could be bad? Go check that place out, get a little bit of insight into the history of Bagan and all the pagodas and temples here. And then I think I'm going to visit the Ananda Temple, which is quite close to the museum, and it's one of the largest, supposedly one of the most impressive and important temples in this area. So we'll go check that place out. And I'm going to try to book a seat on a boat going from here, from Bagan to Mandalay. And I've gotten different reports about whether there are boats running this time of year or not. And I guess I'll go see if I can buy a ticket. And if I can buy a ticket, I guess that means a boat is going. And you just don't know if that's true or not until you show up at the dock. You know, you never quite know what's going on. But we'll look into that as well. Step 1, that sign right across the road, e-bike rental, heading there next. Hello. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have an e-bike ready to go for today?
Yeah, can I near?
Yep, okay.
Okay, how many people?
Just one.
Okay, near.
One person.
Yeah.
I was here yesterday. And
yesterday already?
Yeah. I rented one from you yesterday.
Oh, yes.
Everything was fine?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Worked great?
Yeah.
If it's 2 people, do you have different bikes for 2 people?
Yeah, that's the same bikes. Yeah, 2 people is the best seat.
Oh, okay.
1 person is the not best seat.
I see,
Yeah.
I see. But it's the same engine?
Same the battery.
Same battery, same power.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Yesterday I had number 10 and it was a bright green. Today I've got number 9 and it's a lemon yellow. I never did look at the manufacturer. It says GTR, but where are they made? Made in Myanmar?
No, made in China.
In China?
China.
Oh, okay.
China.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Everything is made in China now.
Made in China now.
Yeah.
Yes. I think the company name is the Tayam.
Diane.
Here.
Oh, here it's on the. Okay.
This one, the Tayam.
Diane.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard that name before.
Yeah.
So I have my e-bike and I'm out on the road again. I just passed the Tharabar gate, which is behind me. Yesterday I didn't go through the gate. I turned right when I reached it and went down to the river. But today I'm heading straight through to Old Bagan, and you turn left there towards New Bagan, and that's when you get to the Bagan Archaeological Museum. Yeah, I had a nice little chat with the guy renting me the e-scooter. I was surprised again how casual it was. I kind of felt weird just handing him 6,000 chats, which is what, about $4 US, and he gives me the key and off I go. I mean, I'm actually giving him information about me because I want him to have it, you know. So I'm telling him I'm staying at the Golden Rose Hotel, I'm in room B3. You know, actually I want him to write something down, more for his sake than mine. I'm just not used to just grabbing a bike and disappearing. But then again, the trust is kind of warranted because where am I going to go? It's not like I'm going to steal his number 9 e-bike. It's not going to get me very far, that's for sure. I was surprised when I showed up at the e-bike rental place to see how many of them had been rented. When I went there the other day, it was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 in the morning, and he still had a whole bunch of them left. But today there were just 3, 4, 5 of them maybe. And then I realized that it's Saturday, and on Saturday a lot more local people show up, and he just had many more people arriving and renting e-bikes. So maybe I was lucky to get one. And this is the low season, so in the high season, maybe you got to be a bit more proactive and make sure you book your bike the night before or something. That might be something to think about. Yesterday I mounted the GoPro on my e-bike using the GoPro, the Gorillapod. That's the only mounting system that I have right now. Yeah, can't really hold the camera in my hand because I need both hands to safely operate the e-bike. Anyway, I'm gonna put the camera away again and then head to the Archaeological Museum. I might try and hold the camera just for a minute in my left hand, see if I can actually drive this thing at all while holding the camera. No, that's not really going to work. You could probably do it, but I need both brakes. It's one thing about these e-bikes, everything seems to work fine. Headlights, horn, mirrors, but the brakes are really bad. So if you have a need for a sudden stop, this is not the bike for you. You are coasting to a stop at best, which is probably why it's good that it doesn't go very fast. Because if a bullock or a dog or a child runs out in front of you, you're not going to be able to stop on a dime, that's for sure. But if you're careful, it does the job. All right, putting the camera away. I've arrived at the Bagan Archaeological Museum. Can't see the building yet, it's kind of behind me here. Parked my scooter, or my e-bike, right here, amongst all the other bikes. It's a lot busier. I rode by here yesterday on my exploring day, and there was nobody here at all. There were no bikes parked at all. So I guess today really is a busier day since it's Saturday. Something I read about this museum, well, two things actually. One is you're not allowed to bring any bags inside. I brought mine with me anyway, but I guess they have lockers with keys, and you just lock up your bag in there. I just made sure to take most valuable things out of my bag so that I can leave it there and not worry about it. The other thing is that they don't allow cameras inside. You can bring in your phone, of course, and everybody takes pictures like crazy with their phone, but if you show up with a camera, an actual, camera, they tell you that you can't bring it in with you. So I'm going to put the GoPro out of its Gorillapod, remove it, and then put it in my pocket so it's nice and small, and I assume I'll be able to get in with the GoPro, even though technically it is a camera. All right, time to get ready to head inside. Right off the bat, I'm quite impressed with this museum. This is the main showroom right at the entrance, and it has 8 sandstone sculptures of different stages of the Buddha's life, statues of 4 of the greatest kings of the Bagan kingdom, and then there at the far end it is like a large painting of the whole area with all the temples. And this is one of the kings of Bagan, King Kayaswa. And I'm guessing that this is another king, King Anhawarata, from 1044 to 1077 AD. He founded the first Myanmar Empire and was responsible for the introduction of Buddhism after meeting Shinarahan and listening to Buddha's teachings. So apparently this fellow started it all here with all the Buddhism and construction of the pagodas. Buddha's descent from Tavatisma. Buddha attaining nirvana. I see this particular view of the Bagan area quite often. Like you see it when people go up in balloons and take pictures of the whole area. You can see the main entrance to the museum behind me there, and it costs 5,000 chats to come in. It'd be like $3 US, a little bit more than $3. And they do provide lockers at the front. They give you a key to the locker, and you have to put your backpack or your purse inside the locker if it's a large purse. And the lockers have a little hook on the outside, a clasp. So if you have your own padlock, you can double lock it with their key and then lock it again with your own lock, which is what I did. So that's kind of nice. And there were signs saying no cameras allowed. So I had to sneak in my GoPro in my pocket. GoPro wins again. This one is labeled Head of a Monk from the 11th century and found at temple number 761/364. They have a beautiful ceiling up above, a lot of light coming in. This one is labeled The Buddha Performing Twin Miracles to His Royal Relatives. According to the sign, this is King Alongsitu, and he built the Thatbyinnyu Temple, the highest in Bagan. I just entered one of the rooms off to the side of the main showroom, and it's a very pleasant surprise. Very airy, nicely laid out, and I can feel just the hint of air conditioning in here, which is really nice. A lot of the reviews of this museum that I read online, the main complaint was that it was just far too hot inside. People found it too hot. But right now it seems it's air conditioned in here. Actually I see an air conditioning unit. An individual one over there on the wall. So maybe their complaints have been heard. And when you come in, they give you this nice brochure in English, which breaks down the contents of each of the rooms one by one. So you can sort of keep track of what you've seen and what there is left to see. And one thing I found kind of interesting is that when you pay your 5,000 chats, they actually give you quite a nice ticket, which is like a solid cardboard, sort of like a business card almost. And it's nothing that, terribly fancy, but it's much nicer than anything you get when you pay your, 25,000 chat to come into this whole area. All they give you is a little receipt that comes out of a cash register. So the museum gives you a better documentation than the whole region does. In my short time in Bagan and driving around and seeing all the pagodas, I keep thinking about bricks all the time. I see bricks everywhere, piles of them, new ones where they're reconstructing pagodas. And yeah, the main building material for most of these pagodas seem to be bricks. I was thinking of that because this display is all about how the bricks were made in this area, and the makers of the bricks, like where the bricks came from, was actually carved into the brick itself. So you can see the name of the brick maker, or at least the region where it came from. And this whole painting behind me, I guess, shows a brick making operation. Don't know why I think about bricks all the time. Even in Indonesia, when I was cycling around Sumatra, I kept coming across brick kilns, where they're making bricks. And then in Bangladesh as well, along the river near Dhaka, there's massive areas that went on for kilometers of nothing but brick making and brick making. Yeah. And you can see that in this example behind me of a part of a pagoda, all made from bricks. And there's the best thing in the whole world, the air conditioner, keeping it nice and cool in here. Oh man, that feels so nice. You can just feel the cold air blasting out of this thing. I'm a cold weather fellow, so I don't know what I'm doing spending so much time in places in Asia where it's so hot. It's not my natural habitat. Nice, oh, it feels good. I hope the other rooms are as nicely air conditioned as this one. I just spotted this sculpture here. It's called Saravanija Jataka, and the label says made during the 11th century from Ananda Temple. And if I have enough time or enough energy today, I think I'll be going to the Ananda Temple after the museum. So this was taken from the Ananda Temple. This one as well is from the Ananda Temple from the 11th century. Sandstone, I guess. All these are carved out of sandstone, also from the Ananda Temple. And one more from the temple. Vasantara Jataka. I don't know what that means. And the last one also from Ananda Temple. So it'll be interesting to go to the temple and see how many items like this are still left in place, or have most of them been removed for safe keeping. And looking at all these artifacts from the temples reminds me of something that I was reading which really surprised me, and that is that the Bagan area is not listed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And at first that seems crazy, because you'd think if anything in the planet was a heritage site worth protecting by the United Nations, it would be Bagan and the temples. But apparently after the major earthquakes, I think there was one in 1975, another in 2016, and probably a scattering of others throughout history, there was a lot of damage done to the temples, and they were rebuilt. And I guess they did it very quickly, and they may not have used traditional building methods or made a large attempt to restore the temples to their original state. So I guess to qualify for World Heritage status, you have to maintain the items, the buildings, or whatever they are, in as close to the original condition as possible. And whatever they've done here in Bagan, their standards don't reach the standards that UNESCO sets for World Heritage sites. I don't know what that means, not to be listed as a World Heritage Site. I assume you get protections from the UN when you are a World Heritage Site, but at the same time, I think the temples here are such a national treasure, or world treasure really, that they would be protected in any event. Still, yeah, it's an interesting story that I had no idea that there were rules about heritage sites and how they were preserved, but it makes sense when you think about it. I really like this painting here. This is the Casting the Bell of Thatbyinnyu Temple during the reign of King Along-Sithu. I just love these huge bells. This one looks massive. I wonder if it still exists today. Keep an eye out for it. I also read about this display online before I came here. I think most Westerners were a little bit bemused by it, wondering what it was all about. I guess it's 55 different types of hairdos in Myanmar. Ladies, coiffure from the Bagan period. There's 55 of them there, and then a whole bunch of them over here as well. Very elaborate. I haven't seen anyone on the streets with these hairstyles though. I love miniatures like this. They really give you a sense of what the area would have looked like originally. It's always hard to picture that, to think back in history to what the villages look like what the towns and cities look like at this time, all around the pagodas. This one on the left says this inscription was found at Shwemyen Pagoda. It records the donation of 4 slaves to the pagoda in 1262 AD. And all the other ones have basically the same idea. It records sort of like a donation to the pagoda, and then they get their own little sign about it. And every single one is a donation of slaves, donation of 4 slaves, as well as money and things like that. And this display is of a stone inscriber using a hammer and chisel to write something on the stone, and a monk is inspecting his work. Yeah, it's something to think about, that all this writing you see on the stones, someone had to sit down with a hammer and a chisel and carve all of that into it. Labor of love. I'm finding that it's quite interesting to see all of these items in the museum, because seeing them out of context, like away from the pagodas themselves, you kind of appreciate them more. Like these stone blocks with all the writing on them, when you see them here in this museum, you can understand just how big they are and how much work went into carving all of this lettering. There's one there. Couple more over here. And when you go driving around here and you see all the pagodas, you don't really appreciate them as much, I don't think, because they're so big and there's so many of them. It's hard to take it all in and appreciate it. But when you see these items in here on display, it really gives you a sense of what was involved in making them. Wow, this display of stone inscription over here. I was reading an information plaque back there, and it made a lot of sense, because I was wondering the other day about the human urge to build all these pagodas and do all this kind of work. You know, why would you do it? And this inscription was talking about how if someone made a donation to a pagoda of money or slaves or other items, they built up merit, and this merit would allow them to move on in the next life to a higher position as they slowly went upwards to enlightenment and would reach Buddhahood themselves. So a lot of the kings and people in general would want to build a religious monument, because it would ensure a better life for them in the future, in the afterlife, as they're reborn. And that's kind of a motivation for doing it, I guess. Here's another example. They're basically all the same. This one says that it records the donation of land, slaves, and cows to the pagoda. I also read that in this lettering, it records all of that, but then they also have a little section somewhere in there that is a curse on anyone who would damage their donation or damage this plaque, to ensure that vandals or people wouldn't steal it or anything like that. The room with the miniature village display, the model of the village area, that room wasn't air conditioned, and it was really brutal being in there. So I can imagine that before all these air conditioners were put in place, it might have been quite uncomfortable in here. And now it's very nice. This is my favorite room yet. I don't know why, but I love these solid stone plaques and the inscriptions on them. This plaque records the donation of 119 slaves, 14 cows, and 510 land to the pagoda. And this is probably the most famous inscription that was found in Bagan, and they refer to it kind of like the Bagan Rosetta Stone, because this stone has 4 sides, and on each side it has this inscription, these words written down, but in 4 different languages. So this is the Pew language, Pali, Myanmar language, and I believe the Mon language. So it's like the Rosetta Stone in that you can compare the words and use this stone to understand the different languages, because you can see the same words and the same grammatical structures but in 4 different languages. It's very cool. And that is what it says in English. And Saturday seems to be quite a popular day for local people to visit Bagan. There's quite a few people in the museum and lots more coming in. And I'm up on the 2nd floor now, what they call the 1st floor. And there's the main showroom on the ground floor. You can see how many people are here, all dressed in very nice clothes. It's funny, because I'm using the GoPro, which is technically a camera, and I'm not supposed to. I've been trying to keep an eye out for museum employees to see that I, don't get caught with my camera. But I can't tell the difference between the employees, the staff, and the local people, because as you can see, the local people are all dressed so nicely. They all look like they're at work, at a fancy gallery or something. So in fact, 2 women did come up to me. They saw me holding this and pointing it at something, and they said, "Oh, excuse me, sir, you can't use a camera in here." But then I showed them what I had in my hand, and they kind of giggled and backed off because they didn't recognize it as a camera. So GoPro wins again. And this is a nice display as well. They have a whole series of paintings of different temples around Bagan. This one is Temple 1498. And Temple 1499. Sulamani Temple. And it just goes on and on, all these paintings. This gives you an idea of how many, religious monuments there are in Bagan. As I said earlier, it's actually kind of overwhelming because you don't know which ones to look at, because they're just embarrassment of riches. There's so many to choose from. This is temple number 360. This looks like quite an impressive one. Thatbyinnyu Temple. So this is where that huge bell was apparently built for. And this is quite a nice room as well. Has a lot of artwork. And this apparently is a lacquer Buddha image. There's all kinds of statues and works in bronze and things like that. And from what I've read here, that in Myanmar they believe that there were 28 Buddhas in history that have gained enlightenment, and Gautama Buddha was number 28. In Bagan, the 28 Buddhas are often seen in mural paintings at the top part of the wall. So my visit to the Bagan Archaeological Museum has come to an end. You can see the main museum building behind me there. I think I was in there for maybe 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half. I'm not exactly sure, but an hour and a half, a couple hours is more than enough time to comfortably see all the different exhibits. If they had a nice coffee shop with a cappuccino and air conditioning, I would have stayed quite a bit longer. But of course, there's no amenities like that, or a gift shop or anything like that. But yeah, I really I enjoyed it quite a bit. It gave me I mean, not a huge insight into the overall history of the area. I felt that was kind of lacking. I don't feel like it showed me anything about the rise of the Bagan kingdom or anything about it, to be honest. But you did see a lot of the pieces that make up these pagodas and temples, and gives you a bit of an insight into each piece, you know, the artwork and the sand sculptures and this kind of thing. So maybe when you go out into the pagodas, you have a slightly better understanding of what you're looking at. But other than the things that you learn in there, it's just a pleasant experience for 5,000 chats. It's well worth it. And it's nice that they have the locker where you can put your bag. They don't just say, no bag, you can't come in. No, they say no bag, but here's a place where you can safely store it. And no cameras allowed, which is a ridiculous rule that you still come across from time to time. And it seems even more ridiculous when all around you, every single person is taking picture after picture with their, you know, expensive high-end smartphones. I think the rule about no cameras is more of a commercial thing or something, where they don't want you to take a high-quality image of their artwork, which you can then commercially sell yourself. But then they end up spreading that no camera rule down to even things like my little GoPro, which they initially thought was a banned camera. But after investigating me, the women seemed to think that whatever this teeny little device I had with me, it wasn't really anything to worry about, and they just kind of waved me away and didn't seem to mind that I was still using it. So I guess now I will head to maybe the Ananda Pagoda. I think that will be my goal now. So time to get back to my e-bike. There's my trusty steed, my e-bike, waiting patiently for me. But I think I'm going to leave it here for a few minutes yet and head off in this direction because I've spotted quite an impressive pagoda nearby. And I believe this one is called the Gawdawpalin Temple. It was completed in the year 1227, and according to what I read, it is the second tallest pagoda in Bagan. So that's something to go check out. But as I said, this area is really extraordinary. I'm just walking to go see that pagoda, and right across the road, there's this structure here. I have no idea how old it is, but it's quite interesting. And I'm passing another smaller pagoda along the way right here. So with 2,229 structures like this in the area, I mean, even if you saw 10 of them a day, it would still take you 220 days to see them all. So it's a lot of things to see. And here is the small pagoda right beside the big one that I'm going to. Yeah, it's a very attractive little structure. There is Gawdawpalin Pagoda behind me. Actually, I believe it's known technically as a temple because this one has entrances where you can go inside the structure itself. I have no idea whether you can go up into these places. I read something where it seemed like that is now being banned. From what I've read in the old days, people were climbing all over these pagodas, climbing to the tops to see the sunset and sunrise and things like that. But over the years, the upper levels have slowly been blocked off and you're no longer allowed to go up there. So I don't know what the rules are like these days. I'm going to head in and see what I can see. There's the temple. And I assume I'll have to take my sandals off again to walk around inside there. Oh, got lots of temple dogs, and I see a litter of puppies over there too. Hey there, Pooch.
You are Bosco?
No, thank you. Okay. Canada. There's the name of it, the Gawdawpalin Phaya. I think Phaya is another word for a temple. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but I think these lions are known as, they have a special name for them. Synth, something like that. These guardian lions. And judging from all the footwear here, it's got to come off. So I'm just walking around the outside of the pagoda. It's quite an impressive structure. I chatted with another foreigner for a couple of minutes just outside of this pagoda, and we were both talking about how many places there are to see here. He said on his first attempt he was going somewhere in particular, actually wanted to go to the museum, and he was staying in New Bagan, but it took him over 3 hours just to get from New Bagan to the museum because he kept getting distracted by all the pagodas around him and stopping to look at all the things along the way. So he says now he's trying to be a bit more organized about it, and he has a plan about where to go, and he's trying not to get distracted. Yeah, here we are at the back of this pagoda. Get a really nice vantage point of this pagoda from this side here. I'm walking around the interior of this pagoda, and on all four sides they have a similar set of large golden Buddhas on display. Like this fellow right here. I wonder what it was like in the original days, like these murals behind it. I wonder if they were all brightly painted, or whether the roof here was also painted. I really don't know. I saw this pose listed as Buddha touching the ground, something like that, with his hand extended down to touch the earth. I've reunited with my e-bike on to the next pagoda. Another change of plans. Instead of going directly to the Ananda Pagoda, I spotted another one called Thatbyinnyu Pagoda, something like that. Seemed appropriate because the one I just visited is the second tallest pagoda in Bagan, and Thatbyinnyu is the tallest, 60 meters, about 201 feet tall, and it's actually on the way to Ananda Pagoda. So we're on our way to the tallest pagoda in Bagan by e-bike. So exciting. I've arrived at the tallest pagoda in Bagan, Thatbyinnyu or Thatbyinnyu, or I have no idea how to pronounce it. There it is there behind me at about 201 feet high. Let's go check it out. Oh, there it is, the tallest pagoda. I have to say these pagodas have a more solid feeling about them than I expected. I'm not quite sure if I'm expressing that properly, but they just feel very square and squat and solid, rather than elaborate and thin, with lots of design everywhere. They're just very chunky, and I wasn't expecting that at all. I have to say that the atmosphere at the temples is much more quiet than I expected, much more low-key. I like that. Again, based on things I'd read online, I thought there might be a real hard sell with people trying to sell you souvenirs and all that kind of thing. And a couple of people have come up to me, with a Burmese Days by George Orwell in English, or postcards asking if I want to buy them. And that's about it. There really hasn't been any kind of unpleasant hard sell at all. And as far as the 25,000 chat ticket, no one has asked to see mine. I don't see any checkpoints anywhere where people are asking to see them. There's the side view of this pagoda. This is the name of this pagoda. As you can see, Thatbyinnyu, Thatbyinnyu. I have no idea how to say it. And there it is behind the sign. This would be the main entrance. So I'll kick off my sandals and head inside. And this is the entrance to the pagoda. The young fellow in the entrance there, he was trying to sell me postcards and then a copy of Burmese Days. But a lot of these young boys, they also ask if you have a sample bill from your home country, like a Canadian dollar or something like that, or a US dollar. And they make it sound like they're collecting them as a hobby. But of course, if they get them, they just eventually cash them in for money. Interestingly, though, he knew that in Canada we don't have a dollar bill anymore. It's been changed into coins, and he knew all about the Canadian loonie because other Canadians have shown it to him before. So it looks like a lot of these pagodas have the same basic design, where when you come inside, there's just a series of tunnels going around the outer edge, and on each side you have a large Buddha statue, Buddha image. Oddly enough, I've seen signs everywhere, you know, giving the rules, the behavior rules for these pagodas. You know, no shouting, yelling, running, you know, doing dumb things. But there's also, each sign says you're not allowed to take photos of the Buddha image, which I wasn't aware that that was a problem. And in fact, everywhere I go, I see the local people taking pictures of the Buddha images with their cell phones. So if that is a custom that you're not supposed to take pictures, the local people do it themselves anyway. I just hadn't heard that rule before. And here, if you weren't allowed to take an image of the Buddha, you couldn't really point your camera in any direction because that's all you see everywhere you go. There is Ananda Temple behind me, Ananda Phaya. This one was built in the year 1105, I believe. It has kind of a cruciform shape in general, and they sometimes call it the Westminster Abbey of Bagan. There's a legend that goes along with this pagoda or this temple. It's not a very pleasant legend. The story is that 8 monks from India came through this area and they spoke to the king, and they told the king all about this beautiful temple in a cave temple in the mountains in India. And the king here was so impressed that he asked these monks to design and build this temple here, which they did. And then the king did not want these 8 monks to ever build a temple as beautiful or as nice, so he had all 8 of them executed so that they couldn't build a similar temple for any other king. He wanted the design all for himself. So let's head inside and see what the Ananda Temple looks like. And there it is from the outside. A lot of the exterior looks quite new and fresh. And I think, if I remember right, this temple was badly damaged during the recent earthquake. And all of this has been rebuilt, which is why it looks so fresh and new. You can see my picture?
Yes.
Oh yeah?
This way.
Yeah, look at that. Ah, very cool. Thank you. So right there you've got a checkpoint table, which is the first one that I've seen here in Bagan. Yeah, it's really kind of cool. The QR code is now, I understand what it's for because I gave them my ticket. She scanned it with her scanner, which is the same basic machine that I saw out at the ticket office near the airport. And when they scan the QR code, the record of my ticket comes up, and if you wait a few seconds, my picture shows up as connected to that ticket, which is kind of clever because it means not only can they see whether I bought a ticket and whether my ticket is still valid. It's valid for 5 days, by the way, from the day that you buy it. They can also make sure that you don't pass it on to another person, because they can see the photograph, and if the photograph doesn't match you, then obviously the ticket belongs to someone else. Well, there you go. They're getting all very modern here. So I'm on the grounds of the Ananda Temple now. I'll swing the camera around. And there it is. Again, I wonder what it was like back in the original days, these outer walls. I mean, were they just plain sandstone like this, or were they painted bright colors? I have no idea. These are funny looking guardian lions in a way, because they have them sitting on the corner so that when you look at it from this side, you see the lion's body. And then when you look at the other side, you get the same view, but when you look at it head on, it looks like he has a huge butt sticking out on both sides. Poor guy. I don't think I've ever seen a guardian lion quite like that before. Beautiful day. Couldn't have gotten nicer weather than this. Sunny, blue skies, but with a nice breeze blowing, so it's nice and cool. This is one of the entrances into the pagoda, and I'm told that there are 4 standing Buddhas like this one on each side as you go around the interior of the pagoda. Oops, oh, so sorry. I didn't see it. I kicked over that poor woman's purse on the ground. She set it down in front of her, but I didn't see it. Here's the Buddha on the second side that I've come around. And there's the third Buddha. I've noticed that each one has a different posture, holding its arms and hands in a different way. And I think these are always my favorite things at these temples. Bells. There's another one of these big booty lions, guardian lions. There's a powerful wind blowing. I think I've walked all the way around the temple. I think this is the main entrance where I came in at the beginning with the checkpoint. Oddly enough, the checkpoint was only on one side of the temple. So if you came in from any other side, you wouldn't go through a checkpoint. It's only that one entrance has it. Well, just when you thought the day couldn't get any better, look at my new friend here. Gorgeous little kitty cat. Living here at my guest house, I guess. Beautiful colorings, look at that. Hey, kitty. And there she goes, my new best friend. So, another great day in Bagan comes to a close. If I was a really good tourist, I guess I'd be making plans to go out to see the sunset from one of the pagodas. I'm not that good a tourist. Maybe I have a couple more days here and maybe I'll find the energy to go do a sunset or a sunrise. No promises though, it's not usually the sort of thing that I do. I set off this morning to see the Archaeological Museum, the Ananda Pagoda, and to book a seat on a boat going to Mandalay, and I did all 3 things. The trip to the museum, I really enjoyed that. That was great. And on my way to the Ananda Pagoda, I stopped off at 2 others. So I saw the second highest pagoda in Bagan, the highest pagoda in Bagan, and then the Ananda. So that was a pretty successful day, I think, at least for me. The best part, to be honest, was just driving around on the e-bike. That's what I enjoyed more than anything else. And at the end of the day, I did book my seat on a boat to Mandalay. And that was a little bit of an adventure, because when I first went out to buy a ticket, I was told there are no boats running at all. This is low season. There are no boats running. Sorry, you have to come back in October or something to get a boat. Then as I'm driving around, I went to another ticketing office, and they says, oh, yeah, we have a boat going to Mandalay. When do you want to go? And there was a boat on the 9th and on the 11th and on the 13th. So that confused me a little bit. Like, there is a boat, there isn't a boat. I didn't know what was going on. And today in the afternoon, I was down at the front desk of my guest house, and they had a sign there that said, oh, we book tickets for these boats that go to Mandalay. So I said, oh, great, I can do that right here at the guest house. So I spoke to the woman there and said, oh, you can book a seat for me on this boat going to Mandalay. And she says, yes, absolutely. We sell tickets on these boats, no problem. So then I said, okay, I'd love to do that. What days do the boats go? And then she backtracked and says, oh, I can't do that. I can't book a ticket for you. So she started off saying, yeah, we book tickets for all these boats. Yeah, no problem. And then I suggested that I did actually want to book a ticket. And then suddenly it was like, no, we can't do that. So I don't know what's going on with these boats. They keep appearing and disappearing all the time. So I went out on my e-bike and I went to this ticketing office at the end of this street. And suddenly I got a whole news story. And apparently there are two boats, two companies running two different boats. And when I got the information about the boats going on the 9th and the 11th and the 13th, it was one company called MRGR Express, I think. That was that boat. So I went there to book a seat on that boat, and they said, oh, we have boats going to Mandalay, and but they leave on the 8th. So now I was totally confused, because from all the other places they said they have boats, but only going on the 9th. And I find out that this is a brand new company with nicer boats, bigger boats apparently, but they're going on the 8th, and I don't really want to go that soon. So I worked with this woman, and she made some phone calls, and she came back and says, oh, we have seats on the 9th. So it's like an alternating reality. Like every time you ask a question, you get a different answer. So if you keep asking often enough, it goes around a circle, I guess, and eventually you get back to the answer that you want to hear. And I ended up buying a ticket for this boat on the 9th going to Mandalay. Is it the right thing for me to do? I don't really know yet. It's actually quite a bit more expensive than going by bus or by train or anything like that. But I don't know, why not? You know, how many times in your life are you going to be in Bagan, ancient city of Myanmar, going to Mandalay? You might as well make the most of it and take a boat down the river. Why not? Spend 10 hours on the river, just enjoying the scenery as it goes by, and then I'll be in Mandalay. So that was a very successful day. Everything is all set up, and I have 2 more days here in Bagan, and we'll see what adventures await in the days to come. So that's the end of today's adventure, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.